Welcome to Brand on the Rocks, where we take bold ideas and distill them into clear messaging straight up. Today's going to be a straight pour, just me and the mic talking through some strategy and big ideas. And in this episode, I'm going to break down how to distill your brand story so that your message is clear and your marketing works. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome to Brand on the Rocks, the podcast that distills bold ideas into clear messages you can actually use. Each week, we serve up conversations, audits, and straight pours of insight to help you cut through the noise and grow your business. Hosted by brand strategist Ryan Holck, this is where clarity comes neat and your brand gets remembered. I have been absolutely fascinated by the process of distilling alcohol. I had a chance a couple years back while I was spending some time with my business coach, Terry Weaver. If you're not familiar with Terry, check out what he's doing with The Thing .live, The Thing Orlando, The Thing Nashville. But while we were together in the Nashville area, we went on a couple distillery tours. And part of the process was just to see how it's done. But part of the process was we realized there were some parallels between how alcohol is made and how stories should be made in our business. And on the tours, what we realized, or what I learned, was that the right ingredients plus the right process equaled high proof results. That a master distiller knows exactly what ingredients have to be put in that mix, how much heat to add to it, what to filter it through, and what type of barrel to age it in. And then how long do you let it sit before you actually drink it and try it? And when those things come together, the result is a high quality product that is highly valued by the drinkers. And what we realized, both of us in the process, was that when we think about brand stories, when we think about the big idea that your business wants to share, not all the little internal things, but like the big idea, that it really takes the right story elements with the right process to take those complex ideas that sometimes can be a little confusing to people outside your company, outside your business, and it makes them easy to understand so that they're highly valued by your customer. This matters because in a crowded and noisy marketplace, it's not enough to just do great work. You have to be able to tell the story about your work in a clear, concise way over and over and over again. Whether it's on your website, on your social media, through your emails, on the phone, your podcast, keynote addresses, your story has got to be so clear that it is high proof. Because anytime you step up to a microphone, whether it's a virtual microphone or it's online where you're typing or you're actually in front of a microphone, you're on a stage, you got to be ready to speak with clarity about your business, about your products and services, and to tell it in a way that connects with your audience, both emotionally and relationally. And what I'm finding is that most businesses, telling a story is a challenge. It's not that we don't have lots of things we could talk about, but that we're so close to the product, so close to the services we provide, that complexity tends to creep in. And instead of inspiring people with what is shared, the marketing, the stories that we tell tend to over-inform people, tend to give them information that is not pertinent to the stage of their connection to us that's really important at this moment. They don't need sometimes all those details. And in the act of over-informing them, we actually disconnect with them and they go, I don't feel like this person understands. I'm not sure I can trust them. I don't think they understand my needs. Sometimes that happens when we are the best solution for the person sitting in front of us. But because of the way it's been conveyed, we totally turn them off. And so they're confused and they're end up uncertain about what we've shared with them. And as a result, they just kind of go, I think I'm going to walk away and find somebody who can explain this a little clearer. Are you struggling to turn your ideas into results and feeling isolated in the process? Alone in business and uncertain what should be happening next? Then the Thing Orlando is for you. This event is where entrepreneurs come together to connect, to gain clarity about their next steps, and to elevate their business game. I'll be speaking there again this year, and you can join with a special discount using I'm with Ryan at registration. The Thing Orlando, November 14 through 16. Find out more at thethingorlando.com. So whether you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, you're a coach, a consultant who is responsible for marketing either your business or someone else's business, the key of your success is going to come down to if you can distill your message into its essentials. Can you take the complex things? Can you take those right pieces, run them through a process to determine what is the highest quality product, the highest proof message that can come out the other end? And I'm not saying you're going to have to dumb your story down. I'm saying you've got to share your story in a context so that it's understood by the person on the other end. Because if you're not communicating with them, you're just speaking out into the wind, and it doesn't matter what you share. So to do that, I have come up with a 3-part process. It's really a framework for crafting a compelling narrative around your brand message. And the very first piece of that is your story. That you've got to identify your core brand message. Now, in one of the first episodes of the podcast, I talked about brand clarity. And this really is what I focus on in this first session, because every successful brand has a list of potential stories that could be told. But just because they could be told doesn't mean that they always should be told. Between your products, your services, your business story, there's a lot of things you could talk about. For most businesses, the difficulty isn't finding something to share, it's finding the right thing to share at the right moment. It's kind of like walking into your closet. So we have a walk-in closet in our bedroom, and you walk in and you are staring at your options. Well, how do you know what to pick? Well, you know because you're thinking, what am I doing today? What type of outfit is this a dressy event? Is this a casual event? Is this a stay-at-home kind of day? And I pick the appropriate outfit based on the answer to that question. And we need to be able to think through our story, our brand, in a similar way, to look at the options of what could be shared and pick the right one in the right moment, taking into account who is in front of us, how well do they know us, how formal or informal is this communication supposed to be. So whether you're a new business who is just starting out or an established brand, this is a process that you'd find benefit in walking through. And it begins with a set of questions. And I mentioned in the previous podcast where I kind of highlighted some of this, that sometimes these questions feel almost too simple. You hear them and you go, I don't know that I want to take the time because I could just answer these in my head. Well, the reality is that if you can, with intention, sit down and begin to process through them, they're going to help you tremendously. And the reason they'll help you is because it immediately brings into focus, of all the things I could share, what is the most important thing that I must share? Okay. And so you need to start with asking yourself a few questions. And this is just a highlight of really my process. But who are we hoping to reach? What problem do they have that needs solving? What solution do I provide to address that problem? When does my solution give people? And what is the next step I want them to take? Now, you'll find if you take a moment and don't just write 2-word answers, but you actually dive into some specifics about each of those things, you'll begin to find several things that the people you want to talk to have certain ways that they're used to getting information. They have certain communication channels they're already using on a normal basis. And so all of a sudden you start thinking, wow, if I wanted to talk to this person, they're used to hearing ads on the radio. That means my story can only be 30 seconds. Oh, this person is used to getting their information through social media, which means my stories need to be 7 to 15 seconds long. My people usually go to AI or Google and ask a voice question that takes them to a website or a short paragraph of information. My story needs to fit in that context, that kind of idea. And so what this process begins to do is to say, we could talk about 12 things. Here is the big idea that our business needs to talk about with intentionality. Take a look sometime at how Apple does this. Apple has a brand of watches. And if you look at the watches, there are little tweaks that they make from one to the other. Sometimes the bands change, sometimes how thick the glass is. There's all these little things they do. But at the end of the day, it's a watch. And the watches really do not have a tremendously different scope of technical pieces between them. But they know that certain watches tend to be used by people who have certain kind of lifestyles. The people who are out doing lots of athletic things, who are mountain climbing, who are out running marathons, they're looking for watches that do one group of things. So they talk to that group with intentionality, using phrases that talk about the big idea in a way that meets them. They talk about the people who are a little more technical, a little more worried about what does this watch do? How does it track things? How can I, what's the information? They take essentially the same watch. 80% of the information is very similar, but they just couch the story in a way that will reach that group of people because they've thought through, here's my big idea that I want to share, and then how would I get it into the context of each of the specific audiences that we serve. And that all happens because they took the right ingredients and began to put it through a process of figuring out how would I talk to this people with intentionality. I have a brand clarity process that runs you through. Look back at, it's either podcast 1 or 2. I think it's 2. There actually is a download. I'll link to it in the notes for you. So that's step number 1 is you've got to identify the big brand message. What is the big thing that we are going to share? And then the second big idea is simplicity. How are we going to distill this message down into a form that connects with our audience well and that is high proof? Your story is too important to be confusing. So your brand message has got to be simple and easy to understand, even if the products and services you provide are difficult or wordy or really complex. Getting to the core message of your brand message is going to help you convey what works. But you've got to, once you know that big story, you've got to take that and say, if this is the big story of our brand, what do our customers need to know at each stage of engagement with us? Think of this like Legos. That as a kid, my brother and I loved Legos, loved the process of Legos. We loved building the Legos, leaving it in its complete form for a while, breaking it apart, rebuilding it over and over again. Okay, so with Legos, especially when you get them fresh out of a box, you have the book that shows you what the end product is supposed to be. And then if you flip through the pages, you see add blocks 1, 2, and 3. And then the next step, add the next set of blocks, add the next, and at the end, you get to the big picture. So when you have an idea of here's the big story that we're going to share, part of breaking that down is thinking about your audience and the first time they engage with us, what information is most necessary. That's like block 1, 2, 3 in your Lego kit. The next time they engage with us, what information is most necessary? That's page number 2, the next set of blocks in your Lego book. And then with the next type of engagement, what do they need to know? That's the next set of blocks. And so part of figuring out your story and distilling your brand story down is most people are going to listen for 15 to 30 seconds, maybe a couple minutes tops. If they're on your website, it may be under 7 seconds. And so part of what thinking through the big picture and how do I break it into elements, into blocks, into short stories that would compound on each other, would build into that final Lego product of your brand story, is really getting to the core messages going, okay, what do they need to know at this very moment? How can I build this almost in pieces, knowing that that's how most people are going to engage? Google has the 7-4 rule that most people are taking. It's taking 7 hours of connection with your brand over 4 different communication marketing channels and a minimum of 11 touch points before people are making a buying decision and actually spending money. So when you begin to think of your brand story, like I have this big brand story to share, but you start thinking of it in these elements as if it's pages in a Lego manual, knowing at the end, I want them to build the whole thing. All of a sudden we go, okay, I'm breaking this into bite-sized pieces that make it easy for the person to jump in and engage with what I need to share. And it will help you in the process as a brand manager, as a coach consultant, to not feel like you have to read someone the encyclopedia of information about your products and services the very first time that you have contact with them. If you were with me for episode 4 with Adam McLaughlin, he talked about feeling like you've got to share the entire cheesecake menu in one sitting. You don't feel like you've got to do that. You feel like my goal in this communication, my goal in this piece of marketing is to move them one step closer, one step forward. And so there are a set of questions that I have to help people engage with this. And this is really a process that these questions starts. And I find that usually we could spend anywhere from 1 to 2 hours really kind of working through this in a one-on-one setting. But I start with, where is your audience in the customer journey? Where are they connected? What piece of the journey are we currently talking about? And what details do they need to have right now at this moment to understand this piece of my product or service? How can I explain these details in a way that they can quickly grasp them without confusion? This is where clarity is so important, that you are thinking about your brand and the message that you need to share as if you were the person hearing it for the very first time, not like you who spends 50 hours, 60 hours a week thinking about how to talk about it. If you were hearing it for the first time, how could you share it clearly? And then, would someone with no inside knowledge of my product and service be able to understand this without explanation? The reality is, you are not going to sit and walk the majority of people through your process from beginning to end. They are going to collect it in pieces, collect it in portions, and there will be no one there to ask questions. So if you give them information that they don't grasp or cannot be acted on without previous information, without another set of explanation, without, Googling a set of words, they aren't going to do it. It's just, people don't put that effort in anymore. It's not like they did 20 years ago when I started in marketing. They gave you some benefit of the doubt. They'd go ask for information. You have to explain it at its core level as simply as possible so that anyone can understand it. I like to actually put my content into something like Hemingway and say, what grade level is this reading at? Because I'm finding if it's higher than a grade level 9 of understanding, it's not that people can't understand it when it's higher, they don't grasp the meaning quite as quickly. And really, grade 6, 7 is my target because I know if I can explain it to an elementary or junior high student and they can repeat it back to me, that anyone I am trying to make a sale to would be able to understand it. And the last question that I asked for this filtering is there a story or a visual element supporting document that I could share with them that would help them quickly understand this big idea that I'm trying to share at this moment? You'll notice with brands that are really excelling that they think about, oh, we keep having at this step of the equation with someone, whether we're marketing or sales, we tend to get these 3 questions often. So they then go and create something to hand to the person. My wife and I are in the process of looking for a new vehicle or a used vehicle right now to replace a car that we just got rid of. And we have been looking for this kind of stuff. We're looking for vehicles that do these type of things. And we're finding some brands are great at anticipating. People are going to ask this question. What are the highlight differences between these trim packages? And here's a form, or here's a spreadsheet, or here's something really simple and visual to help you understand what's the difference between the XLE and the limited or the platinum, or whatever those stages are. So thinking through, what are those questions? When I'm having conversations on a regular basis, what are they asking? What are resources that I can put in their hands? Those elements take your big brand story and begin to help you distill it into, how can I share this thing in micro stories? How can I share this in little elements so that people grasp it? Because people are going to remember things they see. They're going to remember things that are so simple, they're repeatable. And so anything that you can do to help bring those pieces together will help your ideal customer better understand what you offer and why you're the best solution. The third section of this is, okay, so the first one is story, knowing your big story. The second one is simplicity and distilling your brand message, really working on how to focus what you're sharing. The third one is strategy. And it really comes down to mapping a plan for sharing your brand message. And the interesting thing is, in 20 plus years now of marketing, 95 probably percent or more of every phone call I've ever gotten has come asking for deliverables. They've asked for, put my message out in the world. I need help sharing my message. I need help getting it out into the world, pushing that sucker out there, get this out in front of as many people, create marketing, create emails, create social, create ads, create a website, get my message out into the world. They have not asked for, how could I be more clear? Am I sharing the right thing? Is there a strategic way to put my message out? It is literally spray and pray that something works. And the problem is when we don't take a strategic approach to sharing, that we never know when what we're doing is effective. And the moments that it is effective, we aren't sure of the process that allowed us to get there so we could repeat it. So part of a strategic approach, rather than a just give me marketing, is mapping a plan. And it is more than just throwing lots of content out there. That occasionally works. I'm telling you, there are moments I've seen it work, but it is working less and less, and you're never going to scale that. So getting intentional and aligning your marketing efforts will have tremendous ROI for you as a business leader. So you have got to create a plan that is taking into account who your audience is, where they are, what they're doing. But this is not going to be a set it and forget it plan. Over the years, I've had a number of people say, hey, I need ads and I want to pay you to set them up and I don't want to think about it. I just want the ads to work. Well, that doesn't really work because part of your marketing is we're going to strategically start some things and we're going to see how they do. And we're going to assess what worked and what didn't. And we're going to tweak a little bit and we're going to run it a little longer and assess and tweak and assess and tweak. And so getting your message out there, figuring out what is the best ways to engage with our audience. We've got our big story. We've got beginning to distill it into elements that are easily understood. So how do we strategically map out a plan? So I start with this set of questions and they help me then think about and decide where am I going to put my marketing attention, my marketing efforts, my marketing budget to begin with. So where does my audience spend time regularly? What are those channels? What are those things they're doing? What marketing channels are the best options for delivering the story to those locations? What type of content works best in those marketing channels? What would I need to do to show up consistently on those channels? Like frequency, volume of content, that type of thing. What is the next step I need to take to share my story intentionally on those channels? So this set of questions for a local business, there's a local formal wear store that our family is connected to. And these set of questions led us to do some creative things with their marketing. They wanted to get in front of students who would be coming to prom, would be coming to homecoming, would be coming to fall formals, winter formals. Well, we realized that we want students to show up and look their best, but students don't have money. Parents are, for the most part, paying the bill for a suit rental, a tuxedo rental, and for whatever they might be doing connected to actually attending this event. So this exercise helped us look at that group of people and say, I want students to walk through the door, but I need to talk to parents. So where do I find parents of students who would actually be attending events like this? Okay, so I want parents of high schoolers. Where do they hang out? They hang out at school events. They hang out at a lot of sports events. They are following sports talk radio because their sons especially tend to either be on a team or be connected to a school team. Where could we put some marketing that would be intentional? Let's advertise on the local ESPN radio station that does a 2-hour show twice a week targeted at high school sports. Now, that seems for a formal wear store to be a little distance away from who our target market is. But that process came from us sitting and going, our answer to these questions, where are we going to find these people? Where would they reside? Okay, if our marketing ad spend is not that large, how can we focus it the most? All right, I bet you we could get a campaign for the next 12 weeks to put ads in front of those people just during that radio show. So we did. And what happened? All of a sudden, students are coming through the door. Parents are calling saying, we didn't even know about you guys. We've always gone to such and such store down the road. Because we got super intentional about where is that audience spending time? How would we get in front of them? What is the correct message that needs to be shared with them at this moment? But this really comes down to clarity. You have a clear idea of the big picture. You have a clear idea of your story being sliced up into little pieces. So like a Lego system, it adds on. You have a clear idea of how I'm strategically going to put each of those pieces into marketing efforts to help grow my business. But what I'm finding time and time again, whether it's the nonprofit space, it's small businesses, it's coaches, consultants, when you can take into account your story, sharing it with simplicity and sharing it strategically, that this 3-part framework, all of a sudden you get clear brand messages. You have put the right elements in through the right process, and you get a high proof story that your audience, your ideal customer, responds to and loves to hear. And it helps position you then as a leader in the industry because you stand out as someone who is sharing with clarity, not sounding like everybody else who's selling a similar product or service. This is not about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most effective at sharing your business story. So I'd encourage you to take the time to identify your story, simplify your messaging, create a strategy for sharing your story with the world. Your business, your customers, your community will thank you for it because they will understand who you are, what you stand for, the problems you solve, and how to contact you, where to call in order to solve their problem. I'm Ryan Holck, and this has been another straight up pour on Brand on the Rocks. If today's episode gave you clarity, share it with a friend who needs messaging help. And if you're ready to sharpen your brand, to distill your story into something your audience understands and is high proof, contact me about a brand clarity session where we'll dive into your brand, distill your story into the message your audience needs to hear so they take action. As always, thanks for listening. And until next time, keep your ideas bold and your message clear. Straight up.